Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe
You know
button
what's
right now.
absolutely wild? The Toronto Blue Jays are actually doing something, like really doing something. While half the league is sitting around complaining about luxury tax thresholds and acting like they can't afford to compete, Toronto just went out and dropped $350 million this offseason. $350 million. And here's the thing that nobody's really talking about. They might not even be done yet. Think about that for a second. They've already made massive moves, completely transformed their roster, and Ross Atkins is standing at press conferences basically saying, yeah, we're still looking around. That's not the attitude of a team that's satisfied. That's the attitude of a team that smells blood in the water. Let's talk about what they've actually done here because it's legitimately impressive. The Kazuma Okamoto signing is fascinating on multiple levels. $60 million over 4 years for a guy they're calling a utility player. Now, I don't know about you, but when I think utility player, I'm thinking someone making $8 million a year, not 15. But Toronto sees something different. They see a guy who mashed in Japan, brings legitimate right-handed power, and gives them flexibility all over the diamond. That's not a utility signing. That's a premium player they're planning to use creatively. The market right now is absolutely loaded with talent still sitting out there unsigned. Bo Bichette, Kyle Tucker, Cody Bellinger, Alex Bregman. These aren't just good players. These are franchise-altering talents, and every single one of them has been connected to Toronto at some point this winter. That's not a coincidence. The Blue Jays have made themselves relevant again, and players notice that. Agents notice that. When you're willing to actually spend money and build a winner, suddenly everyone wants to hear what you have to say. What Atkins said at that Okamoto press conference is really interesting if you read between the lines. He mentioned they feel good about their team, which, fair enough, they should. But then he added this caveat about how any new additions would start cutting into playing time for established major leaguers. On the surface, that sounds like he's pumping the brakes. But listen to what he's actually saying. He's not saying they won't add anyone. He's saying they have to factor it in. There's a massive difference between those two statements. What does that tell you? It tells you they're being strategic about this. They're not just throwing darts at a board hoping something sticks. They're calculating exactly what another major addition would mean for their roster construction, their clubhouse dynamics, their long-term planning. And you know what? That's exactly how championship teams operate. They don't make emotional decisions. They make calculated ones. Let's game this out for a second. If Toronto brings back Bichette, you're talking about a significant impact on guys like Andres Gimenez, Ernie Clement, even Okamoto himself, depending on how they use him. These are capable major league players who would see reduced opportunities. But here's the reality check. Bichette, at his best, is an all-star caliber shortstop. Gimenez is a solid player. Clement is a good bench piece. Okamoto is an unknown in MLB. If you have the chance to upgrade, you upgrade. Period. Same thing with Kyle Tucker. If the Blue Jays land him, Addison Barger's playing time takes a hit. Nathan Lukes probably sees his role diminish. Even Anthony Santander, who they just signed, might end up in a different role than originally planned. But again, we're talking about Kyle Tucker here. This is a guy who's been one of the most productive hitters in baseball over the last several years. You find at-bats for that guy. You make it work. And this is where Atkins is absolutely right about one thing. Depth matters. Injuries are going to happen. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when and to whom. Having multiple capable players who can step into various roles isn't a luxury. It's a necessity for teams that want to compete for 6 months and into October. The teams that win championships aren't necessarily the ones with the best starting 9. They're the teams whose 26th through 40th best players can actually contribute when called upon. What Toronto has done is position themselves as a desirable destination. That matters more than people realize. For years, the Blue Jays have had to overcome perceptions about playing in Canada, about the Dome, about whatever narrative was floating around. But when you go out and show you're serious about winning, when you back up your words with actual resources, players pay attention. Agents pay attention. Suddenly, you're not trying to convince people to come to Toronto. People are calling you asking if there's a fit. The fact that we're in early January and multiple All-Stars still don't have contracts is absolutely bonkers. This isn't normal. The market has been weird, there's no question about that. But that weirdness creates opportunity. Teams that have been sitting on the sidelines waiting for prices to drop might miss out entirely. Teams that have been aggressive, like Toronto, position themselves to potentially capitalize on desperation as spring training approaches. Think about the psychology of a player like Bichette or Tucker right now. They're watching the calendar, they're watching other players sign, they're wondering when their market is going to develop. Then Toronto calls, and they're not negotiating from weakness. They're negotiating from a position of strength. They've already improved their team dramatically. They don't need you, but they want you. That's powerful. The Blue Jays have fundamentally changed the narrative around their franchise in the span of a few months. They went from a team that people wondered about their commitment to winning to a team that's clearly all in on contending right now. That shift doesn't just affect free agent decisions. It affects player development, it affects trades, it affects everything about how the organization operates. Ross Atkins and the front office have earned credibility with their actions this winter. When they say they're going to be aggressive, the league actually believes them now. When they're connected to a player, teams take it seriously. That wasn't always the case. Reputation matters in this business, and Toronto has rebuilt theirs dramatically. So where does this leave us? The Blue Jays have one of the most improved rosters in baseball already. They have the financial flexibility to make another move if the right opportunity presents itself. They have multiple elite players still available who fit their needs, and they have a front office that's shown they're willing to act decisively when they identify a target. My guess? Toronto isn't finished. They might not land Tucker or Bichette, but I'd be shocked if they don't add at least one more significant piece before spring training. They've got momentum, they've got resources, and they've got a window to compete. That's a dangerous combination for the rest of the American League East.